Look, any respite for people who are threatened with eviction is better than not getting that respite at all in the current circumstances, or indeed in any circumstances where people face the possibility of being made homeless by a landlord, overwhelmingly because that landlord wishes to sell a property or to refurbish it, or says they need to do those things because they want to get rid of somebody to increase the rent, which also happens. But in any event, to be made homeless, particularly in a situation where it is so near impossible in many areas to get alternative accommodation, if you're evicted by the landlord, it's in many cases a recipe for ending up in emergency accommodation or couch surfing or living in overcrowded conditions with family members or with friends. So to get respite from that at any time is good, and in the midst of a pandemic is certainly better than having that threat hanging over you. But I really do not see, Minister, why it is limited to level 5 restrictions and the 10 days after. I mean, it's almost a form of cruelty, to be honest, to do that, particularly in the run-up to Christmas. The idea that your landlord can't evict you for the next 6 weeks, but then can get the green light to evict you before Christmas. I mean, what an awful prospect! What a terrible thing to inflict on people. And they're very real and live situations that we're talking about. One I've mentioned to you many, many times: the St. Helens Court residents in Dáil Éireann, still in that situation, just waiting for the axe to fall, with their landlord trying to push them out, in a block where they've been resident for years and years, families and so on, and right beside it in the same block owned by the same person is 10 empty apartments that have been sitting there for 2 years now. What? I'll address it in my Yeah, but there is no justification, whatever about the perfect being the enemy of the good, i.e. we can't solve everything right now because of constitutional limitations and so on, which I don't buy, by the way. I don't buy it. But there's absolutely no reason, when you have a COVID strategy, which you've made clear we're facing into probably further restrictions, intense restrictions in the new year, there is no excuse whatsoever for not at least retaining the ban on evictions until this pandemic has passed. How in any circumstances, in the midst of a pandemic, where you acknowledge that until we have a vaccine, this is going to be an ever-present threat, how under any circumstances, under any level of restrictions, is it acceptable for people to be homeless, to be put into overcrowded housing conditions, to be put out on the street, or to be put into emergency accommodation? How could it possibly be compatible with public health? How could it possibly be fair? It is not. It is clearly not. At the best of times, to do that to people is cruel and terrible, and shouldn't be allowed, in our opinion. And indeed, you supported our anti-evictions bill when you were in opposition, but to do it in a pandemic and to allow that to happen at any point until this pandemic has come to an end is absolutely unacceptable, in my opinion. I just don't I don't believe that if you say the emergency situation we're in allows you to impose a ban on evictions, why would it be limited to level 5? Why wouldn't it be for the entirety of the pandemic? I mean, there's no good reason, other than we continue to pander to the landlords. That the right to private property, and critically the right to make money from private property, actually is higher up the pecking order of concerns of the government than the absolute imperative to ensure that nobody is made homeless at any point during this pandemic, regardless of the level of restrictions being 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5. I'll leave it at that, Minister. We'll vote for this, of course, but really you should give people that security from the possibility of homelessness, at least for the entirety of the pandemic and the public health threat that it brings with it.
Thank you, Deputy.